Thank you for taking your time to meet with us today. My name is Kristen Gans, and I work on the training and support team here at Hawks. I have my colleague Caitlin here with me today. She is our senior content specialist, and she works on building questions for our econ, psych, and English materials. So I plan to give a brief tutorial of our question builder tool. I won't go in depth today just for time's sake. So if you'd like any further training, don't hesitate to reach out and let us know. And Caitlin plans to demonstrate building a question from psych, econ, and English for you. So as a reminder, here in the instructor gradebook, if you're not familiar, on the assignments tab, you'll find question builder down here on the bottom left. When you open it up, you'll be asked to create folders. So I recommend creating these folders for your questions based off of topics or lessons, maybe an upcoming assessment that you're giving to help keep your questions organized. So click Create here under Folder Options and give it a name, maybe Test 1. And then you'll make sure that folder is selected and click Create here under Question Options to create a question within that folder. So up at the top here, you have your toolbar where you can add in an image. So you can either add the URL or upload the image from your computer. You can add alt text. So if you have students who are using a screen reader, it will read the description of the image to them here. You can also add in an even longer description here than what would be allowed in the alt text field, where you can add in a table and special characters. You can add in a table here and adjust the number of rows and columns, as well as choose the style of table that you'd like to add from the drop-down menu. You can add in a caption and a summary for your table, and you can add in a copy data button to the question. This would allow students to easily copy the data and paste into maybe Excel where they can do the calculation. This is where you would add special characters. You can also create dynamic questions. So rather than having one static version, you can create up to 50 iterations. So you want to create that variable table here using the variable manager. You'll be asked to give this a name. It can be as simple as variable table 1, or if you'd like to name it after the topic of the question you're building, whatever helps you easily find this variable table when you're building your question. And then if you look down below, you'll see that you'll fill in the cells with the values or the words that you're filling in for your question. So you can simply type into the boxes here. I'm just typing in numbers for a quick example, but you can also do the calculations in Excel and copy and paste that data here to the variable table, and the rows and columns will automatically adjust for you. If you have any empty rows or columns, you'll want to make sure to remove those from the end. And also add in rows and columns here as well. So let's say I'm making an English question and I'm asking students to find the noun in the sentence. My correct answer would be here in column A. And maybe I have a couple incorrect answers here in column B and column C. Once you're finished creating your variable table, you'll make sure to save that so that you can insert these values into your question statement. Expression Builder is what you'll want to use to build out any mathematical expressions. If you're familiar with LaTeX, you can build using that language here into the box. If you're less familiar, you can use the LaTeX documentation. This will take you to a page, which will walk you through how to code most anything you want to know how to create here. Up at the top, we have a shortcuts bar. So maybe you're wanting to enter an exponent. You can simply click it from the toolbar. And then there's a nice preview down below so you can make sure everything is displaying as you would like as you're building out the question. Graph Builder allows you to build graphs into your question statement and your answer choices. So from the drop down here, you can add points, lines, and a variety of other shapes. And then you'll see you have other standard formatting options such as bold, you can italicize, underline, center your question, that sort of thing. Moving down, we have our question header, which is optional. You might use this if you have instructions that would be used for a multi-step question, or maybe a table that would be used throughout a multi-step question. Just click Edit here to add in the question header. And then the question statement, of course, is required. So you would add your question statement here, and then scroll down below to choose what type of question or what type of answer choice you'd like for your question. So we'll start with multiple choice. That's our default here. With a radio button, meaning there's one correct answer. So let's say that answer 1 is your correct answer. You would toggle from the incorrect to correct to make answer 1 marked with 100% credit. If maybe you have an alternate answer that you'd like to give 50% credit for, you could enter that partial credit here. And for any incorrect answers, you can also click Show Explain Error to give a specific explain error, pinpointing where that student would have gone wrong to get this incorrect answer. You can use this trash can icon here to delete any of these answer choices. You can also add in additional answer choices here. If you have more than one correct answer, you'll want to toggle over to check boxes, which would allow students to check off the boxes for any correct answers for this question. Now from the drop-down, we'll move to free response. Free response would provide students with an answer box to enter their answer within. So you would enter your correct answer here. You can add a prefix or a suffix, those are optional. And then you'll choose how you want this question to be evaluated. So our default is expression. From the drop-down, you'll see there are a variety of other options here. You can click the question mark icon, and it gives you a nice overview of what each of those would be used for. If you'd like further details on what would be identified as correct, incorrect, improper, you can read our training documentation here. And this gives you a nice overview for each evaluation type of what is considered correct, an alternate correct answer, incorrect, improper, and unsimplified. You can add an additional text box here to your answer choice if your correct answer has more than one part. You can also add in other answer boxes. Maybe, again, you'd like to give partial credit for a particular answer, or maybe you'd like to enter an incorrect answer that you give a specific explain error for. From the drop-down here, we'll shift to open-ended. Open-ended would provide students with an answer box similar to free response. The difference is that it would not be automatically evaluated by our system. Students would be notified that they have an open-ended question on their assessment and that the instructor is going to evaluate their answer before they get their overall grade for their assignment. So you would go into your instructor platform, review their assignment, and manually give them credit for that question. At that point, the students would be able to view their overall score for the assignment. Click to select is an interactive question type where students would click to select a group of words, maybe a single word, or maybe even a sentence to identify something particular. So maybe you're having students identify the word or sentence that has an apostrophe error. And for click to insert, this is another interactive question type where students would click to insert information into your question statement. They're not actually doing the entering, they're clicking an icon similar to this triangle icon here to show where that information would be entered. So maybe you're asking students to insert the copyright date into the information you have listed. For any of these Hawks created questions, you can add tutor options here. So you can add a hint, a solution, a general explain error, so pinpointing maybe a few general areas where students could have gone wrong versus that specific explain error that we talked about earlier, and a step-by-step, walking students through each step of the way. These are optional, but if you're wanting to create them to more closely mimic our Hawks created questions and provide students with more feedback throughout their question, they are here for you to use. And then over here on the left-hand panel, you can also add the tutor options from here and add additional steps. When you're done creating your question, you'll want to save in the bottom right. You'll be asked to choose a difficulty level and name your question so that you can easily identify it when you're adding it to any lessons or web test assignments. And then I do recommend that you preview to make sure that everything looks as you expect it would. And one of our newer features is that you can create a new question here from this page. So if you're creating questions that would fall within the same folder that you originally selected, just create a new question from here. For those who are more familiar with our Question Builder tool, you previously were asked to go back to the question bank page, select your folder, and then click to create a new question again. So this should save you some clicks here. All right, so I know that was a very brief and quick overview of the Question Builder tool. As I mentioned at the beginning, if there's anything you saw here that you want further training on, don't hesitate to reach out to your training and support representative, and we will get that scheduled with you. But at this point, I'm actually going to pass it over to Caitlin, who's going to demonstrate building some questions for us.
Okay, great. So I have Question Builder open here, and I have some folders created. I'm just going to show how to build a question from the ground up, specifically an economics question. So I have the folder, try to hit create, and then I'm going to start with the question statement, since that's right at the top. And I already have a question built in another document, and I'm just going to be copying and pasting from that document into Question Builder. So let's enter the question statement. And then usually the next thing I do after that is start filling in variables and expressions. So in the text that I've already written, I've indicated where I want to insert variables. So this is just kind of my own shorthand for that. You can use whatever works for you, but what works for me is just to put variable and then a letter that corresponds to the correct column in the iteration table, and then brackets around it just to kind of further delineate it from normal text. This variable is special because it is preceded by some LaTeX, which I, again, have already done because I'm a little bit familiar with it. But again, like Kristen said, you can always play around with the LaTeX and Expression Builder and see how it'll look live. So I'm going to run this whole thing through Expression Builder. So I'm just going to highlight it, open up Expression Builder, paste it in, and then you can see that this LaTeX has turned into a $sign. That looks good. That's a good sign for me that I did that correctly. And then I'm just going to highlight this part and turn this into a variable, into dynamic text. So I'm going to enter the name of the variable. And then again, I have my iteration table already built in Excel, and I'm just going to copy it from there and paste it in here. So this is a super simple, basic iteration table. It's only got 5 iterations. Just wanted to keep it simple for the sake of demonstration, but typically we do 30 to 50 iterations. So I'm just going to go ahead and insert, and there we have our variable and our larger expression. I'm going to hit OK. You can see this is now an expression. It has a little border around it. You can click on it. If you double click on it, you can open Expression Builder. And then we've got a couple more expressions in here as well that also have variables. So I'm going to go ahead and format those real quick. Just copying and then pasting into Expression Builder, selecting what I want. And then that said variable B, so I'm going to hit B from this column selector. So this will select all this column here in the iteration table. And then same thing here. This is variable C. I'm going to select C from that drop-down menu. Hit Insert. Now we have our full expression. And then I hit OK, and now we have that done here. And then there's one more. And again, variable B and variable B. Okay, so next step usually that I take is to format the text in any way that I want. There's not a whole lot of formatting I need to do here. I've already put this second statement on a new row, which I wanted to do. The only other thing that I want to do in this case is make this Q into a variable. Because it stands by itself, it doesn't need to be run through Expression Builder necessarily. But what I'm going to do is go into the source code actually and add some HTML tags. So this, you don't have to do this, but if you're familiar with HTML or you know some basic HTML, you can do this. What you would do is select the field and then hit the source button up here, and this will show you the underlying code. So I'm going to scroll over a little bit, find that queue, and then I'm going to add what are called var tags, which will make the web platform recognize this queue as being a variable. So I hit source again, and that looks good. You can see the display has actually changed a little bit to reflect that, so it's now italicized. All right, so after the question statement, I just kind of work my way down. So next step is to choose the question template or the answer choice format. I'm going to choose free response, and then glance over these basic rules here to make sure everything's the way it needs to be. So it's going to evaluate as math, it's going to be an expression, that all looks good. And then this actually has two answer boxes. So the correct answer will have two components because we asked for the output and the price. So we have one answer text box by default here. I'm going to add another one. So this is all part of answer one. And then they have prefixes. So those are optional, but I'm going to add some in. And you can do plain text here, you can do expressions, you can do variables, anything you can do anywhere else in the question. So I'm going to do an expression. I'm going to paste in the text that I already have written. And there you go. And I'm going to do the prefix for the second part of the answer. You can see it preview here. That all looks good. Great. So then in the actual answer box right here in the middle, I'm going to put in the variables that will correspond to the correct answer, which in this case are E and F. Great. So then next step would be to add any possible incorrect answers that students might have entered. You can do as many as you can think of. We typically try to do that. We come up with at least 3 to 4 options that students might have entered. But for demonstration, I'm just going to add one. So you can come down here, add another answer, so you can see this is answer 2. So this is a possible incorrect answer that someone might have entered. You can see the prefixes carried over automatically, and the suffixes would do that as well if you have those. So I'm going to enter the variables here that will correspond to a possible incorrect answer. You can see it gives you a nice little prompt if you don't enter it. So I'm going to enter E here. So maybe they actually got the quantity correct. They got one part of the answer correct, but they didn't get the price right. So we're going to put in another variable here. Cool, so we've got our possible incorrect answer, and then we can put in explain error. So I hit this button here that says show explain error. Now this field down here popped up. I'm going to come over to my document and paste in the explain error. So I'm going to do a little basic formatting here, just indent that. So this actually, again, this is completely optional. It depends on your own preferences, but usually what I like to do in all parts of Tutor is restate the question statement just to remind students of what they were asked to do. So in this case, you know, I could re-enter all of these expressions and variables if I wanted to. That's totally fine. To save a little time, a little click action, you can also copy and paste. So I could just come up here and copy and paste this text and stick it down here super easily. You can also copy and paste within the source code, which I will demonstrate right now. So I hit source up here in the question statement, highlight this text that I've already formatted with all the expressions and variables, come back down, hit source again, select the text that I want to replace. So this is just plain text right now with nothing, no variables or anything. And then replace it with what I copied from the question statement. I'm going to mess around with the HTML a little bit. hit source again, and now you can see, great, we have these formatting expressions down here now, and that saved me a lot of time. I'm gonna play with this a little bit, use these buttons up here, get the indentation just right. So now we have our specific explain error. So this question will also have all the other parts of tutor as well. It's gonna have a hint, a solution, and a general explain error. So you can come over here or over here, you have some options to add those other parts of tutor. So I kind of just, again, work from top down, start with the hint, paste in the text, and I'm actually going to do the text for all parts of tutor. This is, again, another little kind of tip that I found that helps, just to do it all at once, because especially if you're going to be repeating text in multiple parts of the question, like this answer statement here that we're repeating, it helps to just paste it all in all at once, and then you can go back all at once and replace it with the formatted text with the variables and expressions you need. So I've done hint solution. I'm going to do general explain error, paste it in, and then my next step would be to come back to specific explain error, select this text again, and again, you don't have to go into the source code to do this. You can definitely just copy and paste straight from the normal view. Come back here and then paste it in. Hit source, and we can see, great, that carried over perfectly. So I would do that for solution and general explain error. I'm not going to do that now, just to save a little time, but that's my next step. And then I also want to show step-by-step. So that is our last component of the question, our last part of the tutor element. So I've opened it up here. Again, you can do this from up here or over here. It automatically opens step 1 for me. And then we have this optional header. So you see all of them have this optional header. You can use it to enter notes or any other text you want. I like to use the header in step-by-step to, again, restate the question statement. Because it will show up for all steps of the question that way. No matter what step of tutor the student is looking at, they'll always know what the question statement was. So I'm going to see if I still have that text from before. Yeah, I do. Great. So we'll just paste that in. And now you can see that shows up right here. And also up here, this is the original question statement. But if you went to step 1, you would see it. And that's a nice reminder just to yourself of what your original statement was. So that's nice to have that there. We have the step-by-step header, and then we have the statement for step 1. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. And then again, we have some things that would need to be run through Expression Builder. They would need variables. I'll quickly demonstrate at least one just to show you. So this doesn't actually have numbers. It's just letters that represent numbers, so they're variables. And you can see that displays nicely there. And then of course I would want to fill these in too. So similar to just the normal part of the question, the step-by-step can also have different answer choice formats. So this one is going to be free response. So the student will be prompted with some help, and then they'll be able to enter the answer. So I'm going to put in a prefix. Again, this is optional. And then you can enter whatever the correct answer is, which in this case, I'm going to use a variable, and that's variable A. So you can add more steps. I'm going to add another one. This will be the next part of solving the problem. This one is also going to be free response. So I can add in my prefix. And you can also, you can do plain text in a prefix. You can do variables. You can do expressions. So I'm actually going to enter this as an expression just to show you. You can do that there. And then enter the variable. And then let's add in one more step. And again, you would want to format these, but I'm just going to bypass that for now. Add in the prefix. Don't forget to select the answer choice format. Add in the expression into the prefix and then the answer. Great, so we have all parts of the question built out. We theoretically have everything formatted the way we want. So I'm just going to save. And then now I'm prompted to answer or enter the question name. So I'm just going to choose that. And then this is a high difficulty question, so we'll choose that. Cool. So now I'm going to preview it. So I always do this after I create a question. It's a great chance to see what it'll look like to the student and also to see everything that I've entered and make sure that the variables are showing up, that the math is showing up properly, and that everything is working and looking the way that it should. I'm just going to scroll down here. We can see, yep, this all looks good. We can see these expressions that we entered are displaying. Great. We can see the answers we put in. So this is the correct answer here. You can see 100% correct. And then we have this alternate answer here. And then below it, it'll show the specific explain error that we put in. And then you keep scrolling and you can see the other parts of tutor. So we have explain error, we have hint, step by step. So this is that header that we put in. And then we have step 1, 2, and 3, and we can see what we put in for those answers. And then down here we have the solution, and then one of my favorite buttons, new values. So this will actually cycle through the iteration table and show you how the numbers are showing up, or text, and make sure that everything is working together and that your iteration table makes sense. So you can make sure that, you know, this text is supposed to be showing along with this text for this iteration. You can see that live happening, which is great. So you can just click through, click new values. You can see that dynamic text that we entered here, the variables, is flipping through different iterations. And that all looks good. So that is kind of the basics of building a question from the ground up. I'm going to go back out to the question bank now and briefly look at an English question. So I've already built most of this in Question Builder, but I just wanted to show what it looks like to use variables in a text-based question. So this is multiple choice. It's radio button. There's only one correct answer, and then there's one possible incorrect answer. So students are identifying either a dependent or independent clause. So here you can see this is static text. It's going to be the same forever and ever, no matter what a student looks at it, no matter when they look at it. So if we wanted this to be different, maybe say sometimes we wanted it to be independent clause, sometimes we want it to be a dependent clause. What you can do is turn this into a variable. So I'm going to pull up, again, I have it in another document, and I'm just going to be copying and pasting. So I've already pasted in the iteration table, and I can just highlight the text I want to replace, open the variable manager, and you can see the table is in here. We have all the information we need. And this first column, variable A, is all the possible clauses. So some of these are dependent, some of them are independent. So just hit insert, and now we have dynamic text. So now that this is dynamic, now that this is changing, we should probably make these change as well, because now that this clause is going to be sometimes dependent, sometimes independent, the correct answer isn't always going to be independent. So what we can do is just highlight again, open the variables, and then choose the one we want. So we want this to be B. And then same here, this is the incorrect answer, and we'll make that C. So super easy to turn even a text-based question from static to dynamic. I'm also going to show specific explain error in this case. So again, we have this restatement of the question statement, and you can super easily just copy the variable that you want and paste it in here. So now students can see what they were actually supposed to evaluate, what clause they're supposed to be analyzing. And then I want some of this to be dynamic down here too, because this won't make sense every time, you know, if depending on what kind of clause the student has seen. So again, you can just highlight the text that you want to replace. Or if you've done it from the start, you maybe have built the question dynamically from the very beginning. And then we can just replace it with a variable. So I'm going to highlight that, insert variable G, and then I also want to replace this so that it's customized to the specific iteration. And there you go. We have a fully dynamic question. I'm going to hit save, and we'll get to preview this and see how it looks. Okay, so you can see you can actually select the answer choices here, and you can interact with them, and it'll pop up the explain error if there is any. And this looks good. We can see in the hint we did some formatting. You can bold, you can underline, indent, make things kind of pop a little bit visually. And then down here we can use the new values button and scroll through all the iterations in our table. And we can see the text changing, and everything is matching up and looking great. All right, we're going to go back to the question bank, and then at the very end now we're going to look at a psychology question. So this one is pretty much fully built. It's multiple choice. I wanted to mention actually that you can preview the question right here from your full question bank view. You can scroll down and see all parts of the question. You can interact with it. You can click on it, see that explain error pop up. Or if you want to potentially edit the question and get into it a little deeper, you can just hit edit and then come down here and hit preview. So I'm going to cycle through and see what's up with this question. Looks good. You can see students are asked to evaluate 2 different scenarios and pick which one is likely to result in the bystander effect. This is psychology, and everything is looking good here. So preview is one of my favorite things because it really shows you when something might be wrong and helps you get things formatted just the way you want them. So that is it for me, and I'm gonna pass it back to Kristen.
All right, thanks so much. All right, now that you guys know how to build a question, I plan to show you here how you would add those custom questions to a lesson or a web test assignment. So on the Assignments tab, you'll scroll down to the bottom left here and go to Curriculum. You click into your section name to open your curriculum and select the lesson that you'd like to add the question to. This will open a second tab called Lesson Builder. And from the question bank drop downs here, you'll want to choose Instructor Created. You'll then see a second drop down with all of the folders that you created in Question Builder earlier, where you can simply click the Add button per question to add it to the lesson, or if you had multiple, you could select all of them at one time and bulk add them to your lesson. Back on the Assignments tab under WebTests, you wanted to add your questions to any sort of assessment or any sort of additional assignment that you're using the WebTest tool for, and you're creating from scratch, we'll click Create New. And then from the question bank drop down here in the upper left, you choose Instructor. And again, you'll see your folder name where you can click to open the question bank and select Add Per Question, or you can select multiple at once and add them in bulk. All right. Well, thank you for taking your time to watch our webinar today. As I mentioned earlier, if there's anything that you'd like further training on, or if you have any questions that you'd like to run by us, don't hesitate to reach out. We would be happy to assist you.